When the sea turns hostile, even the most skilled experts can be caught off guard. From great whites striking inside bustling harbors to bull sharks invading flooded rivers and orcas flipping research kayaks, these encounters reveal how unpredictable and merciless the ocean can be. Calm waters and familiar coastlines turned into sudden battlegrounds where survival was measured in seconds. In this video, we'll dive into 6 gripping stories where experience met nature's fury, and control shattered the moment the ocean decided to strike back. On the morning of October 3, 2025, the sky over Gansbaai Marine Port in South Africa was clear and cool, with little sign of the danger lurking beneath the surface. 3 dock workers, Peter Jacobs, 41, a senior maintenance coordinator with 12 years of harbor operations experience, Samuel Koch, 36, a former commercial diver now specializing in port chain repairs, and Jonas Meyer, 28, a newer recruit eager to prove himself, had been assigned to secure a buoy chain that had come loose after the violent winter storms of the previous week. They entered the waist-deep water along the inner maintenance zone, a spot considered relatively safe due to its proximity to the dock's reinforced structure. It was routine work for Peter and Samuel, both accustomed to South Africa's unpredictable coastal behavior. Jonas, however, had never performed a marine fix this close to the open water channel. He followed Peter's lead carefully as they positioned themselves around the heavy chain, using their weight to tighten the line while coordinating hand signals with a crane operator on the dock above. Gansbaai was globally infamous for its dense population of great white sharks, but maintenance staff rarely encountered them inside the marine port. The area's underwater activity had been unusually disrupted recently by displaced seal movement caused by weeks of rough sea conditions. Unbeknownst to the 3 men, bait fish had been forced into the shallower port earlier that morning, a warning sign that went unnoticed in the calm light. The water remained murky and brown from sediment churned by the storm, limiting visibility to almost nothing below the surface. Peter instructed them to remain steady while the dock crane adjusted the chain tension. Their attention stayed downward, focused on the thick steel line beneath their hands, not on the silent movement drawing closer, just meters away. The first warning arrived too late to react. A massive shadow rose without sound beneath Peter. The surface split violently as a great white shark, nearly 15 feet long, detonated upward from the port's silty water, its jaws clamping around Peter's leg before any of the men had time even to register movement. The impact threw his entire body sideways, the force dragging him under in one horrifying instant. Samuel lunged instinctively, grabbing Peter's harness from above the waterline. Jonas reacted next, splashing heavily and pulling upward with both hands. Their training had emphasized composure in marine accidents, but panic surged instantly as the predator twisted beneath them. In seconds, routine technical maintenance had transformed into a life-or-death struggle in full view of bystanders on the dock. The surface erupted for a second time. The surface exploded again as the shark shot upward in a tight turning strike, its immense body twisting sideways as it released Peter and redirected with terrifying speed. Samuel was hit next, not fully bitten but slammed and scraped by the predator's flank before its jaws found his thigh, tearing through his wetsuit and ripping deep lacerations across the muscle. The force of impact knocked both Samuel and Jonas off balance, and all 3 men churned desperately toward the dock ladder as the water around them stained red. Bystanders on the platform above reacted instantly. A crew member dropped emergency flotation buoys while others extended metal hooks normally used to stabilize incoming vessels. Peter's vision blurred as blood loss began to take its toll, but Samuel and Jonas held him upright, kicking frantically as the shark's tail created pressure waves that shook the water behind them. The predator, disoriented by the splashing and increasing human resistance near the metal support pylons, veered away for a brief moment. Enough time for Jonas to reach the ladder and shove Peter upward with the last of his strength. Hands reached down from the dock, gripping harnesses and pulling with full force. Peter's injured leg trailed lifelessly behind him, soaked in crimson, while Samuel climbed up next with one arm, his thigh badly shredded. Jonas scrambled last, slipping once but catching a rope line that had been thrown down to him. As he was yanked out of the water, the shark surged again, its snout and dorsal fin breaking the surface in one final pass before retreating into deeper harbor water. Once fully on deck, the scene shifted from survival to emergency response. Dock personnel immediately applied tourniquets and pressure dressings. Peter was ghost pale, fading rapidly from blood loss, while Samuel fought to stay conscious as medics secured his leg and stabilized him for transport. Jonas, miraculously the least injured, remained in shock, his hands trembling uncontrollably, skin drained of color, but physically able to assist responders. Ambulances arrived within minutes, sirens echoing down the concrete pier. Peter was loaded first, semi-conscious, his blood-soaked gear being cut away to expose torn flesh and severed tissue. Samuel followed, his injuries severe but no major arteries compromised. Jonas refused initial treatment until he confirmed his colleagues were stable enough to transport. Marine officials soon arrived to secure the area, halting all port operations immediately. The attack was classified as highly unusual but not without explanation. Rough post-storm water conditions had drawn seals and baitfish unpredictably close to harbor maintenance lines. And in Gansbai, a shift like that could bring apex predators within meters of human activity in seconds. By late afternoon, the port remained on lockdown. Peter underwent emergency surgery for extensive leg trauma, while Samuel's deep thigh injuries were cleaned and stabilized. Both were expected to survive. Jonas was released after observation, carrying no physical wounds but shaken beyond words. The event sent immediate shock through South African maritime circles. It stood as a stark reminder that even seasoned professionals working in familiar water could be one environmental shift away from a predator encounter, with no warning, no time to prepare, and mere seconds to fight for survival. On March 3, 2024, marine biologist Dr. Evan Hayes descended beneath the frozen surface of the Arctic Ocean near Svalbard, Norway. Equipped with thermal diving gear and specialized core sampling tools, Evan was an experienced polar researcher, having spent years studying extreme marine ecosystems that exist under permanent ice. He was known among his team as calm under pressure, meticulous, and deeply fascinated by ancient marine species that thrived in the coldest, darkest corners of Earth. This particular expedition involved collecting sediment cores from beneath the sea ice, rich samples that could reveal chemical signatures and microbial activity from hundreds of years past. A support team remained above on the ice shelf, monitoring Evan's oxygen levels, communications, and camera feed in real time. The water temperature hovered just above freezing. Below the ice shelf, visibility shifted unpredictably as clouds of disturbed sediment drifted across the beam of his dive light. The environment was silent, almost surreal, broken only by the faint sound of his breathing through the regulator. Evan maneuvered slowly along the rocky seabed, positioning his equipment carefully to extract sediment without disturbing the fragile terrain. Every movement had to be measured. Sudden shifts could stir silt and reduce visibility to zero in seconds. The dive site sat above an ancient glacial channel, an environment rarely visited by humans but occasionally crossed by Arctic megafauna. Evan's camera captured bands of emerald light filtering weakly through the ice above, giving the underwater terrain an eerie, dreamlike appearance. Small haloed particles drifted by, illuminated by the dive lamp in the otherwise ink-dark water. He remained cautious, aware that low-visibility environments in the polar regions often mask large, slow-moving predators. As he shifted closer to a natural ledge layered with ice-softened stone and drifting algae, a faint distortion moved at the edge of his peripheral vision. The camera feed adjusted. Something vast and indistinct drifted in the green haze beyond his light range. For several seconds, the shape remained distant, silent, barely moving, as if suspended in time. Evan kept still, shining his light ahead slowly. Then the massive silhouette materialized clearly into frame. A Greenland shark, almost 20 feet long, emerged from the shadows, gliding with the unhurried motion of an animal older than human civilization. Its gray, scarred body appeared timeless, its movements slow and methodical. Greenland sharks are among the longest living vertebrates on Earth, some possibly over 300 years old, and this one carried the presence of something ancient and unbothered, moving as if time itself flowed differently around it. It passed silently behind Evan, close enough that the faint pressure change rippled the water around his arms. He did not move. The shark did not attack. It simply observed, drifting in absolute silence beneath the ice. The Greenland shark continued its slow path just behind Evan, brushing a few strands of drifting algae aside as it drifted past the rocky ledge. Its movement was deliberate, unhurried, as though it had no true intention but curiosity. The water around Evan pulsed gently from the giant animal's mass, displacing the frigid sea. He remained absolutely still, allowing the shark to exist without interference. The creature's scarring, its ancient texture, and the slight cloudiness of its eyes gave it an otherworldly presence, a living relic from a time far older than any human history recorded. For several tense seconds, the shark hovered just ahead of him, barely moving its tail. Then, with infinite calm, it turned, circling slowly through the green water. Its silhouette briefly vanished into the particulate haze, only to reappear once more near Evan's periphery. It did not accelerate or display aggression. Its approach was silent, composed, and ghost-like. The extreme cold meant everything moved differently, every disturbance lingering longer in the water. Even the faintest tail movement from the shark stirred visible ripples along the silted floor. It was not a hunter in frenzy. It was a giant inspecting a visitor. Evan gently pivoted his light downward to reduce the risk of startling it. The shark drifted even closer, its rough flank nearly grazing the end of his core sampling rig. Its presence conveyed nothing but ancient observation, weight, age, and cold authority. The shark lingered beside him for what felt like minutes, its motion unbroken, its energy endless. Eventually, it eased forward, passing him again with the same voiceless composure, a slow departure into the darker gradient of the icy abyss. When it finally faded from sight, swallowed by the natural Arctic fog of green light and drifting particles, Evan resumed minimal motion. His breathing rate stayed controlled as he began his steady ascent back toward the underside of the ice shelf. Every motion remained precise. Nothing rushed. The memory of that silent specter followed each cautious kick upward through the near-frozen water. Breaking the surface, he emerged beside the ice hole his team had cut earlier. Strong arms pulled him onto the stable platform. The support crew noted his unusually quiet expression. He was uninjured, calm, yet visibly changed, not from fear of attack, but from witnessing something that exceeded modern understanding. Something impossibly ancient, older than science could fully define. Moving with sovereign grace beneath ice untouched by human presence for centuries. Later analysis confirmed the encounter to be among the rarest. Documented footage showed the Greenland shark entirely uninterested in aggression. Experts reviewing the footage emphasized that these sharks do not strike rapidly like great whites. They move slowly, investigate quietly, and only in extremely rare cases would they ever react defensively. The footage became an educational reference on why knowledge, not panic, matters most in shark territory. Evan later described the encounter as the most humbling moment of his career. It was not about danger. It was about scale, time, and the realization that some creatures live in a different rhythm of existence altogether. Their world older, quieter, and vastly deeper than ours. November 3, 2019. The sun rose softly over Oahu's north shore, casting warm gold across the calm Pacific. 32-year-old Daniel Brooks walked down the sand just after sunrise, surfboard under his arm. He had spent most of his life in the ocean and knew this stretch of water better than anyone. Born and raised in California, he moved to Hawaii in his late 20s to pursue a dream of working in marine tourism. What was meant to be a temporary stay turned permanent when he met his future wife during a beach cleanup event. By 2019, he was a husband, a father to a newborn daughter, and still deeply in love with the rhythm of the sea. Daniel was respected in the local surf community, calm, humble, and always cautious. He led surf lessons in safer bays and avoided unnecessary risk, but the North Shore was where he felt most alive. It was late season, the summer crowds had thinned, and the water looked peaceful that morning. No heavy swells, no warning signs, only sunlight flickering gently across the reef below. He decided to go in for one last swim and slow paddle before heading home to his family. His wife waited on the sand with their infant daughter, watching him prepare like always, checking tides, glancing at current patterns, and taking a moment to steady his breathing. He wasn't chasing waves that morning, just drifting, a quiet farewell to another beautiful day. Daniel paddled out past the shallow reef, the water warm and glassy. He lay flat on the board and let the ocean carry him. Fish darted beneath the surface. The sky above was clear. Everything felt familiar, peaceful, safe. But not far below, a large tiger shark patrolled the reef edge, one of the most powerful predators of Hawaiian waters. Tiger sharks often glide undetected beneath calm surfaces, especially in early morning light when hunting visibility is highest. The water gave no warning, no distortion, no disturbance. Daniel floated still, legs trailing gently behind his board, a common position, but a vulnerable one. From below, movement and silhouette were enough. A massive shape rose vertically from the depths. The strike happened with no sound in the air, only a violent eruption beneath the surface. The shark lunged upward with immense force, jaws clamping directly onto Daniel's leg. The impact snapped the board's leash instantly and pulled him underwater in a single motion. Nearby surfers saw only an explosion of white water, then a flash of deep red. His muffled cry was heard for just 1 second. And then, silence, broken only by the chaotic movement of churning water. The water around Daniel erupted into chaos as the tiger shark thrashed beneath him. Its power felt in the violent surge that followed. The sea, moments earlier calm and golden, now foamed with turbulence and streaks of red. Nearby surfers froze for an instant before instinct took over. Several began paddling toward shore while others shouted toward the lifeguard tower further down the beach. The predator vanished as quickly as it had appeared, leaving only disturbed water and drifting debris where Daniel had been moments before. Daniel resurfaced briefly, but the injury was catastrophic. The shark's bite had torn deep into his leg and side. Blood spread rapidly, dark against the clear water. Rescuers sprinted into action from the shoreline, lifeguards racing with rescue boards while others urged people out of the shallows. Daniel was pulled onto a rescue sled within minutes, his body limp, his breathing faint. Even as he was rushed toward the shore, the extent of the damage was clear. The ocean around him left a fading bloom as they paddled back with urgency. His wife saw everything from the beach. She ran forward before lifeguards could stop her, panic overtaking her as paramedics arrived with medical gear. They began emergency treatment immediately, pressing down on severe wounds and working with precision. But the blood loss was extensive. The scene drew silence along the shoreline as beachgoers watched from a distance, some unaware at first of what had happened, others already understanding too well. Despite rapid response and extraordinary effort, Daniel did not regain consciousness. Paramedics continued working until the final call was made. He was pronounced dead at the shoreline, surrounded by first responders, family, and stunned witnesses, who had moments earlier watched a peaceful ocean morning. News traveled quickly through the North Shore community. Local surfers, divers, and fishermen arrived quietly, staying back respectfully near the sand as the area was cleared. The ocean that had been Daniel's second home had taken him without warning. Lifeguards raised warning flags along the stretch and temporarily suspended all water activity, instructing people to leave the shallows. By late afternoon, the water had returned to stillness, but the impact remained heavy. In the days that followed, friends and locals built a small memorial near the access path to the beach. Driftwood stacked carefully, shells surrounding a framed photograph. Flowers were placed daily by visitors who may not have known Daniel personally, but understood the depth of the loss. His name became another reminder in a place where the ocean is both treasured and feared. The incident reinforced what Hawaiians have long known, that tiger sharks patrol shallow reefs silently, and that even the most experienced waterman is never beyond risk. Daniel had entered the sea with full awareness, but nature had acted without pattern or mercy. His family later chose to keep visiting the shoreline, not to relive fear, but to honor familiarity and respect. The memorial still stands, weathered but present. A quiet acknowledgement to every passerby that beauty and danger coexist in every tide. July 9th, 2023. The sun beat harshly over the Atlantic as 38-year-old U.S. Coast Guard pilot Jack Thompson guided a rescue helicopter over turbulent waters southeast of the Bahamas. Jack had served for over a decade flying critical medical and emergency missions, and was known among his team for his calm decision-making under extreme pressure. He had completed dozens of successful rescue operations in hurricanes, night storms, and crash extractions. But on this mission, fate shifted in seconds. Jack and his 2 crew members, flight mechanic Aaron Blake and rescue swimmer Daniel Reyes, were responding to a distress signal from a sinking fishing vessel. Light wind pushed rolling waves across the sea surface, but visibility remained clear. Their objective was straightforward: stabilize the vessel's occupants until backup arrived. Jack guided the helicopter into position, preparing for a hoist maneuver. Without warning, a critical mechanical fault triggered alarm indicators across the cockpit. Seconds later, the engine began to sputter and lose lift. Jack instinctively issued emergency commands, attempting to regain control, but the altitude dropped rapidly. The helicopter tilted sideways. There was no time left. They executed an immediate controlled ditch. The aircraft struck the water hard, rotor violently shearing off on impact. The cabin flooded rapidly. Jack and his crew ejected as trained, unbuckling, clearing debris, and kicking free from cables. The helicopter sank beneath them in under a minute. All three surfaced alive but were scattered several meters apart. Their emergency raft failed to deploy properly. Left floating in the open ocean with only their survival vests, the men regrouped, forming a tight triangle to conserve energy and maintain visibility. Hours stretched under unforgiving sun. Salt water stung open cuts and lips. The ocean shimmered deceptively calm, masking the growing danger beneath. Jack's experience told him this was the worst-case scenario. Warm open water, crashed debris, distant from immediate land response. Oceanic whitetip territory. The oceanic whitetip is one of the most persistent sharks known to investigate shipwrecks and aircraft crashes, often arriving before help ever can. They are not cautious. They are direct, strategic, and unafraid. Around the third hour, the first fin appeared. A broad, blunt dorsal fin cut the water in slow, deliberate motion. The shark circled, approaching from below the sunlight glare. Aaron tried to remain still, but his leg injury from the crash was bleeding slowly into the sea. Subtle crimson tendrils began trailing downward. The shark's pace quickened. Jack kept his breathing calm. The predator closed in, closer, judging. A slow predatory test arc. Their vulnerability is visible, their movements are small. But there was no raft, no barrier, no platform, only open water. And then everything changed in an instant. The oceanic whitetip closed the distance without hesitation. In one explosive movement, it surged forward, its jaws clamping onto Jack's shoulder with bone-crushing force. The impact spun him sideways, water erupting in a violent burst around them. Pain shot through his chest as the shark twisted, dragging him downward in a spiral. He felt the world narrow to salt water, pressure, and searing agony. Instinct forced his free arm toward the emergency flare gun strapped to his vest. With a desperate strike, he slammed it once against the shark's snout. The predator recoiled briefly, releasing him, and Jack broke the surface, gasping, arms slick with blood. But the attack was not over. The shark resurfaced almost immediately, circling again, faster this time, recognizing weakness. Aaron and Daniel kicked desperately to create a disturbance, trying to keep their focus split. The open ocean, endless only moments ago, now felt impossibly small. Their movements were careful but urgent. Panic meant wasted breath and exposed limbs. Jack fought to stay conscious as blood seeped into the water around him, spreading wider by the second. The predator returned in a sudden burst, striking from below in a brutal collision that sent water slamming upward. This time it seized the lower side of his rib area, shaking with ruthless precision, attempting to roll him under once more. Jack's vision blurred, his arm numb, but adrenaline pushed through. He drove the flare gun down again and again until the shark recoiled, veering off momentarily into the murk. That moment saved his life. Above them, faint rotor thunder began to tremble through the air. A dark speck in the sky grew rapidly larger, a responding rescue aircraft. The shark sensed the growing disturbance and slowed its circling, its movements less direct but still present. Jack drifted near unconsciousness as Daniel wrapped an arm under his chest, keeping his head above water. The rescue plane descended low, releasing a winch line into the ocean as crew members shouted to guide the lift. Aaron signaled frantically. Jack was lifted first, his vest harness clipping in just as the shark reappeared below, drawn by renewed motion. He rose out of the water slowly, blood streaking past his torso, as the tail of the shark swiped the surface beneath him. Within seconds, Daniel was secured next, eyes locked downward as the predator circled yet again. But before it could strike once more, the remaining two men were airborne, water dropping away beneath them. Only two were retrieved alive. One crewman never resurfaced after the initial chaos. Jack arrived at the emergency facility pale and barely conscious, losing significant blood from deep shoulder lacerations and fractured bone tissue. Surgeons stabilized him, his survival credited solely to his experience and precision during the attack. The predator had inflicted catastrophic damage in seconds and had returned 3 separate times. In the aftermath, marine experts confirmed the behavior as typical of oceanic whitetips, relentless and bold, especially toward castaways. For Jack, the mission ended not with rescue, but with a haunting reminder that in the vast open sea, survival can depend on seconds, and on the instincts honed long before the predator ever appears. On July 8, 2024, Dr. Emily Foster paddled her slim red research kayak across the cold coastal waters of British Columbia. At 33 years old, she was already known for her extensive work studying vocal communication among orcas. She had grown up along Canada's western shoreline, fascinated by marine behavior from a young age. After earning her doctorate in marine biology, she joined multiple research expeditions focused on analyzing how orca pods respond to changes in water temperature and prey availability. Calm under pressure and methodical in every movement, she was trusted for fieldwork in both rough seas and remote environments. That morning, weather conditions were almost ideal for documentation. The sea was gently rolling, with only thin layers of mist drifting over the surface. A distant island ridge framed the horizon while faint birds circled overhead. Emily, accompanied by two research partners in separate kayaks behind her, followed a small resident orca pod known for predictable behaviors. The team had been studying the same group for nearly 3 days, observing feeding patterns and recording acoustic responses. The orcas were known to travel close to shore this season, following salmon runs through deep channels that cut across the coastline. Emily held a waterproof camera secured around her neck and a data recorder clipped to her kayak. She navigated slowly and quietly, respectful of distance yet attentive enough to capture clear footage. The water was a deep steel blue with high visibility as sunlight began to break over the surface. As the pod surfaced and dove in synchronized motion, Emily leaned forward, adjusting her angle to capture dorsal fin markings. Everything remained calm and controlled. A larger male began to approach from the right, its fin slicing through the water in near silence. Orcas were powerful but highly intelligent animals, and she had trained for countless hours to recognize curiosity-driven approaches from alarm responses. She gradually shifted her weight to stabilize the kayak, positioning her lens with care. The orca exhaled in a sharp plume just meters away, its presence magnificent and enormous even in stillness. Emily leaned slightly farther than usual to capture a clearer angle as it surfaced again closer to the kayak bow. It was then that the orca changed course. Without warning, aggression, only deliberate precision, it nudged forward beneath the surface and rose, making direct contact with the kayak's underside. The tilt was sudden and forceful. Emily had no time to correct. The vessel lurched left in a sharp pivot, and in a single motion she slipped over the edge into the icy Pacific water. The cold hit instantly, cutting through her wetsuit and restricting her breathing. Her kayak rolled once, then stabilized upside down nearby as the massive silhouette passed beneath her feet. Emily fought to remain steady, treading in the frigid water as cold pierced through every muscle. The flipped kayak drifted a few meters away, while the massive orca turned slowly beneath her, its dark form gliding in long, deliberate arcs. It did not strike again. Instead, it circled with unsettling curiosity, rising occasionally to brush its side against the overturned kayak. Each movement created a forceful swell that rocked Emily further off balance. She kept her arms out to avoid slipping beneath the surface, her breathing tight and shallow as she focused on staying calm. The whale rose again, closer this time, its broad head pushing gently at the underside of the kayak as if testing its movement. The vessel rattled against the water and shifted in the current. Emily carefully extended one hand toward it. She knew sudden flailing could provoke further contact. She reached slowly, steadying her body and positioning herself so she could push upward. Her paddle floated nearby, spinning slowly on the surface. She stretched her arm toward it, fingertips brushing the shaft, and managed to pull it toward her chest. Holding the paddle with one hand, she used it to create a controlled distance between herself and the orca whenever it drifted too near. The massive animal passed alongside her again, its fin towering above the surface. It bumped her leg, not with a bite, but with a curious brush of muscle and water pressure. The contact alone was heavy enough to jolt her sideways in the water. She corrected herself, then angled the paddle beneath the hull of the overturned kayak, using her weight to attempt leverage. Her colleagues paddled quickly toward her from a safe distance, assessing the timing to intervene without worsening the situation. They kept their kayaks from rushing too close, knowing rapid splashing could trigger heightened responses from the whale. Emily, shivering violently, finally managed to hook her knee onto the edge of her kayak. The orca circled wider now, no longer directly beneath her. With strained, disciplined movement, she pulled her torso over the slippery surface of the overturned hull. The effort took every controlled breath she could muster. She pressed her body flat, gripping the edges with both hands as cold water poured from her wetsuit. The orca lingered nearby moments longer, rising once more before gliding calmly into deeper waters, its massive shadow fading beyond visibility. Only then did her colleagues close in. They paddled beside her, bracing the vessel while she edged to one side and flipped it upright with a practiced motion. They stabilized it as she climbed inside, knees trembling, water streaming from every fold of her gear. Her fingers were numb, her breathing ragged, and her skin pale from exposure. Yet she remained steady, holding the paddle across her lap as they led her back toward the research vessel. Once aboard, she was wrapped in thermal blankets, her body shaking from cold and adrenaline. Medical checks confirmed heavy bruising along her shoulders and legs, where contact with the whale had forced sudden impact. In a later review, experts confirmed the orca's behavior was exploratory, driven by curiosity rather than aggression. Yet the power behind even a gentle nudge from such a predator served as a sobering reminder. The encounter reinforced global warnings issued by researchers. The wild may show restraint, but it never guarantees safety. On December 28, 2024, Liam Ford, a 22-year-old outdoor enthusiast from Queensland, joined a small group of friends on a spontaneous trip to a freshwater gorge near Townsville, Australia. Liam was known among his circle for his love of adrenaline, not professionally, but as a hobby. He often spent weekends hiking, cliff jumping, and exploring remote nature spots across the state. The gorge they chose that morning was familiar to locals, but the conditions were drastically different than usual. Heavy rains from a passing storm system had flooded the entire river system, muddying the water and pushing strong currents through the narrow rock corridors. That morning, Liam and his friends hiked along the elevated rim of the gorge under clear skies. Steam rose from the soaked ground as the sun pressed heat into the humid air. The river beneath them was wider than usual, its surface dense and brown from silt pulled down from upstream farmland. Driftwood branches and tangled vegetation moved steadily with the current. None of them considered it unusual at first. During the wet season, swollen water levels were common, and the gorge had always hosted local swimmers and jumpers. Liam chose a low ledge by the water's edge, one he had jumped from many times before in normal conditions. His friends spread out along the bank, some preparing cameras while others waded to shallower spots to test footing. The water appeared calm near the wall, sheltered from the faster central current. Without hesitation, Liam stepped forward and dropped into the flood-filled basin feet first, cutting through the surface with a clean entry. For a brief second, everything appeared ordinary. A simple leap into deep river water on a summer day. However, the floodwaters had changed everything beneath the surface. Far from its usual state, the river was now connected to coastal channels miles downstream, its boundaries blurred by rising tides and storm surges. At that moment, a powerful predator was already there. A bull shark displaced and swept upriver through connected tributaries, navigating murky brown current with ease. The first impact came almost instantly. Barely seconds after his entry, Liam felt a crushing force slam into his lower leg. He did not see it. He only felt raw pressure and a violent twist. Beneath the surface, the bull shark's jaws clamped into his thigh, thrashing with sudden power. The water burst into turbulence around him. Startled gasps erupted from his friends above as the water erupted in a churning surge of foam. Liam's body snapped sideways under the force, his arms flailing instinctively for direction. The shark bit once, hard, shaking him before its grip slipped free. The terror was instant and far from over. Liam shot back toward the surface with a burst of instinctive panic, blood already trailing from his torn thigh. As soon as his head broke through the brown water, his friends grabbed his arms and shoulders, hauling him toward the slanted rock shelf at the river's edge. The bull shark remained dangerously close, its massive shadow circled beneath, cutting tight patterns in the murky current. Every splash and kick from the group created vibrations that risked drawing it in again. The ledge was slick with fresh flood algae, and the current kept pulling Liam sideways as his friends struggled to hoist him out. His injured leg dragged under the water, leaving a red path behind him. The predator surged again, brushing past his calf with heavy force, the movement sending shockwaves through the group still waist-deep in the water. They kicked furiously, striking through the surface with legs and arms, desperate to create enough disruption to discourage a second strike. One friend wedged a knee against a submerged rock, forming a brace point to drag Liam upward. At last, they managed to shift him onto the partially submerged slope of the gorge wall. Water continued to push across the rock, but it was just high enough to give him something solid to hold. Liam locked one hand onto a jagged stone ledge, chest heaving, skin pale from shock and rapid blood loss. The lacerations on his thigh were deep, irregular, and bleeding heavily. Each pulse of his heartbeat sent warm blood down the rock and back into the water below. The shark did not vanish. Its dorsal outline reappeared near the drop-off, circling the same small radius just meters away, waiting, testing, reacting to every movement. No one dared step back into deeper water. The group instead worked along the wall, guiding Liam horizontally toward a safer landing further down the bank, where the incline allowed easier exit without entering deeper zones. The progress was slow, but the distance gradually grew between them and the predator. By great fortune, a nearby bushwalker had already called emergency services after hearing the panicked shouting echo through the gorge. Within minutes, rescue crews arrived via off-road vehicle, then descended the ravine with medical equipment. Liam's leg was quickly stabilized with pressure wraps and emergency clotting pads. His vital signs showed a rapid heart rate but stabilized breathing. A stretcher harness was secured around his chest, and he was lifted carefully up the rocky path as paramedics guided each movement with precision. The shark remained in the water below, still circling long after the extraction was complete. Liam was airlifted to a hospital, where trauma surgeons began immediate reconstructive surgery. The bite had ripped deeply into muscle tissue but stopped short of full arterial severance, making rapid response the determining factor in his survival. The injury was severe but salvageable. Local experts later confirmed what many already feared. Floodwaters had connected inland river systems with coastal migration routes, allowing bull sharks to patrol areas considered safe under normal conditions. The incident became a sobering lesson for coastal communities and travelers alike. Calm water had never been a guarantee of safety, and after that day, none of them would ever look at flooded rivers the same way again. What once seemed peaceful now carried hidden dangers beneath the surface, a reminder that even stillness can conceal the deadly power and unpredictability of nature.